Hi! So it's been a minute since I posted on this channel, but I am now back to make a very overdue video about the figures that I pre-ordered in 2023. Last February, I posted a video about my pre-orders for the year, and I mentioned wanting to showcase the figures as they arrived, but obviously, since I take forever to make one video, I didn't end up filming any dedicated videos on those figures. However, I do still want to show them off and discuss my thoughts on each figure. Let's start things off big with the Aisaka Taiga B-Style Tiger version. I mentioned this one in my pre-orders video, and it was the first one that I received. I remember back in 2022, before I even started collecting, I thought to myself that if I were ever to get any B-Style figure, I would definitely get her, but after I pre-ordered her, I found myself questioning whether I still liked her and if I even wanted to keep her. Once I got her though, I was really happy with my decision. She had such a presence in my collection and, due to her size, could be appreciated even when viewed from a distance. And of course, I just loved her design. Over time, I began scrutinizing her within my own collection and whether I really wanted to keep her. I have no intention to buy any more quarter scales as they are too large and too expensive for me. I've also grown a bit fatigued by the bunny girl trend, and I have not watched Toradora in years, and frankly, I'm not that attached to the story or to Taiga. So I sold her. But I was genuinely happy to have her in my collection, even just for a bit. I guess the final verdict on this pre-order is that I appreciated the figure while I had her, and I don't ever regret owning her, but thinking carefully on my preferences now, I wouldn't buy her again. Next up are the Kotobukiya Mei and Mudkip and Brendan and Trico figures. I did mention these two in my 2023 pre-orders video, but to tell you the truth, I 100% picked them up because of FOMO. Like, I literally cancelled my Mei pre-order because I decided that I didn't want her, but then I panicked like 10 days later and just bought both of them. My initial reaction to receiving these figures was just, why? Like, why did I buy them? I completely regretted buying them, to the point where I almost resented having these figures. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with either of these figures. They're very cute and look exactly like the prototypes. But at the same time, I remember thinking I could have used this money on other figures that I wanted more. Why did I impulse purchase them? I got over it eventually, and I moved them around my collection for a bit and started to quite like them. I did end up selling them regardless, because I decided that they don't fit what I want for my collection. Plus, when it comes to the Pokemon figures, I really prefer the Pokemon Center original figures over the trainer figures. Once I got over my initial regret, I could recognize that they are both very cute, but just don't match my current taste in figures. I also would not buy these figures again. Also, a lesson to myself to not impulse purchase figures. One of the main reasons I really regretted buying Mei and Brendan was because I wanted to pick up the Nana figures, which I ended up buying anyways. Technically, I didn't pre-order these two, rather I picked them up right after release, but I'll still include them. This might be the first time that I've mentioned this on my channel, but when it comes to manga, I've been primarily a shoujo manga reader for the past year and a half. I remember being quite interested in these figures when they were first announced, just because shoujo series rarely ever get figures, let alone scales. But I actually hadn't read Nana until about a year ago, and even then, just the first few volumes, which I read primarily to justify this purchase. Nana and Hachi are both very, very nice figures, definitely the shoujo figures that we have been missing and that we deserve. I'm a big fan of floral elements, so of course I like their bases a lot. Even though the bases don't really match together, the flowers seem to suit each of the characters' personalities. I also think that their outfits are very stylish, as per shoujo standards, as per Yazawa Ai standards. Nana's tights are also made out of real fishnet, which I guess is technically the norm these days for tights on figures. This is probably my own bias speaking, but I feel like figure manufacturers are really missing out on making more shoujo and josei figures, especially of the female leads with how great the fashion is in a lot of these series. But I digress. That'll be a conversation for another day. Anyways, they're great. I love them. They were a little overpriced, but I don't really mind. I would absolutely purchase these figures again, and I really hope companies make more scales of shoujosei characters in the future. One of the only shoujo characters, or even the only shoujo character really, that seems to get nice scales regularly is, of course, Cardcaptor Sakura. I had 2 Sakura pre-orders last year, the first of which is the Good Smile Company Pinky Promise Cardcaptor Sakura figure, which was also in last year's pre-order video. I remember first finding out about this figure when I was still in college and just absolutely falling in love with her. She's extremely extravagant and, again, floral elements. To my relief, the smaller, more delicate parts like her flower bouquet and pearls are made of a more flexible material, so my concerns about these breaking were addressed. She definitely took a while to assemble, although for me, even if it's a little tedious, I kind of like assembling things, especially when the final product is a gorgeous anime figure like this. To be completely honest, I don't think that I would pick up a figure this large and this expensive nowadays, but she was one that I really wanted to own a couple years ago. I remember telling myself that after I graduate college and start working, I would buy this figure as a gift for myself. Now, I did buy other figures before her, but she definitely carries more of that sentimental value. Between the time when I graduated college, started working, and pre-ordered this figure, I was definitely going through a bit of a rough time. So although I wouldn't buy a figure like this nowadays, I would never get rid of her. Besides just being a gorgeous centerpiece in my collection, I really do consider her as a nice gift for the past me that really wanted her, and also kind of a nice reminder to myself that things did get better. For a brief time, I also had on pre-order the Ichiban Kuji Anya block calendar figure. I watched the second part of Spy Family Season 1 with my current roommate, who is a big fan, so I pre-ordered the figure right after we finished. But I realized after a few months I wasn't very attached to the series or the character, so I cancelled it. I still think she's one of the better Anya figures out there, especially since she's a functional calendar, but maybe if it was a different character, I'd actually be interested. Earlier I mentioned that I prefer the Pokemon Center original figures over the Pokemon Trainer figures, and last year I picked up the re-release for the Lillie and Cosmog figure, which I also mentioned in my 2023 pre-order video. Kotobukiya has really been killing it with all of the re-releases these past couple of years. I know that part of the reason why they're doing so many re-releases is because manufacturing completely new figures is extremely costly nowadays, but it's also just nice as the consumer to not have to give into extravagant aftermarket prices. Lillie has even gone down since release, so that's very refreshing when compared to before. Lillie is very cute and dynamic and suits my current taste in figures. The floral patterns in her base are a nice touch as well, and her base itself isn't too wide, which is something that I've been more mindful of when considering figures lately. I've always thought that her design and character were very cute, and in hindsight, Sun and Moon were actually really fun games too. Final verdict, she's absolutely adorable and I'm very happy with this purchase, and I would buy her again. And for my final 2023 pre-order is another Kotobukiya re-release that I mentioned in my manifesting re-releases video, this Sakura figure in her outfit from the third opening Platinum. I wouldn't say that this is my favorite Sakura outfit, but I love the third opening song and how well it captures the heartwarming and nostalgic mood in the Sakura card arc. Plus, until recently, this was the only recent Sakura scale with her design from the 90s anime where she has brown hair. Most of her scales tend to be based off clamp illustrations or her design from the clear card anime, where she's more of a strawberry blonde. I also love wings on figures, and hers are shaded with pink, which is very fitting. I like the magical circle design on her base, although the base itself is rather wide, and I don't understand why her base is stacked like this, but I'll forgive it since I love the rest of the figure. I mentioned in my video that she was one of my most sought after Sakura scales. She used to be really expensive in the aftermarket, which obviously made it very difficult for me to buy. There were actually quite a few people on my figure collection, me included, who sent request forms to Kotobukiya for this re-release, so I do like to think that our input made a difference. So final verdict is, of course, I love Sakura figures, and this one is no exception. I'm very happy that the re-release allowed me to pick her up without having to drop hundreds of dollars on her. And I would buy her again. Despite keeping my final 2023 pre-orders under 10 figures, I still feel as if I bought more than I anticipated, especially considering that I also picked up plenty of released figures last year, so it all adds up. But I was able to pick up figures that I genuinely wanted, so in the end, I think it's okay. Before I end the video, I'd like to give a rundown on my 2024 and 2025 pre-orders. For January of this year, I briefly had the Radio Ava Part 2 Mari monochrome version pre-ordered, but I realized that I was buying into the hype of Radio Ava without having any attachment to the series myself, so I cancelled her. Then for April of this year, I had the Kotobukiya Iono and Belly Bolt figures pre-ordered. Despite never playing Scarlet or Violet, I loved her design and told myself that I would get a figure of her if one was made, and then she got announced, so I pre-ordered her. But she was really expensive, so I debated trying to sell my Amazon JP pre-order. I decided to just go through with it, but luckily my card declined when they charged me, so I just never updated my card info so that the order would get cancelled. I was able to pick her up on Yahoo Japan auctions instead for way cheaper, and selected the cheapest shipping option, and even though I have to wait longer to receive her, I'm much more satisfied with the amount that I paid in the end versus what I would have paid on Amazon Japan. For July 2024, I had a few pre-orders, all of which I cancelled. First was the Rigveda Astra figure by HobbyMax. I just can't justify his retail price, so I'm hoping he drops after release so I can pick him up cheaper. Then I had the re-release for the Aniplex Devil Homura. I pre-ordered her on Hobby Search, but then I got stressed thinking about the cost, so I just cut my losses and paid the 10% cancellation fee. I know I mentioned her and Ultimate Madoka in my Manifesting re-releases video, and I do still want them, but right now is just not an appropriate time for me to be dropping so much money on figures that I have so little space for. I also had the Snow Miku 2024 Nendoroid pre-ordered for a while since I went to Hokkaido earlier this year, and although I didn't go to the Snow Miku festival, I did see a bunch of Snow Miku related stuff and even had some Snow Miku soup curry, so I pre-ordered the Nendoroid to commemorate that trip. But I later pre-ordered the Hanami Sakura Miku scale, and I figured that I didn't need more than one Miku figure. And for 2025, I tentatively have 4 pre-orders. First is the UA Nendoroid, which releases Q1 from the Good Smile Company US shop. I would still prefer a re-release of the HobbyMax scale, but for now, the Nendoroid is cute too. And as I mentioned before, I have the Good Smile Company Hanami Sakura Miku pre-ordered on the global shop. I really like this figure's aesthetic with the pink and the wind and the overall springtime vibe. And one of the reasons that I want her is because I think she'll look really nice with the next figure that I have pre-ordered, which is the Cardcaptor Sakura 25th anime anniversary figure. I am not kidding when I say that this is the Sakura figure that I've been wanting. I literally wrote down in my notes app a bunch of figures that I wish existed, and this is right at the top. So I like to think that I manifested this one into existence. I am particularly excited for this one, although I'm not dying to own her. I'm more just content knowing that my pre-order is secured. And last but not least is the Ayase Chihaya from Chihaya Furu Nendoroid. I was really surprised when Good Smile Company first announced Chihaya because it's been a few years since the last season, and like I mentioned earlier, shoujose series very rarely get figures. But Chihaya really turned out so cute. From the moment Good Smile Company announced her, I knew that she was a day one pre-order, and I'm so happy that one of my favorite characters from one of my favorite series that I never expected to get a figure actually got one. The Yue and Miku I may still cancel if I have to, but the Sakura and Chihaya are 100% keepers. They were actually made for me. Moving forward, I am trying to be more mindful of the number of figures I pre-order within a calendar year, as well as the number of figures outside of pre-orders that I might also want to pick up. And considering my combined pre-orders for 2024 and 2025 are much lower than my pre-orders for 2023, I think I'm doing pretty good. After my first full year of figure collecting, I feel like I've collected a good chunk of my wish list. What remains are mostly figures that I'm holding out on re-releases for, that are still in the prototype phase, or that I'm simply in no rush to own. Now, having a decently sized, and more importantly, a well-organized collection, I'm finding myself rather content with slowing down on purchases and just enjoying the figures I already have. All of the figures that I have, I wanted to begin with, so I may as well just slow down and appreciate them instead of continuously pining for ones that I don't. Thanks for watching till the end, and I'll see y'all next time. Whenever that is.